My name is 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝗪𝗙, Executive Director at PIKOM, the National Tech Association of Malaysia. PIKOM is the association which represents the technology industry in Malaysia. Its membership currently stands at more than 1,000 active companies involved in the spectrum of tech products and services, which command 80% of the total tech businesses in Malaysia. In PIKOM, there are 5 chapters that we oversee, and they are OM, formerly known as Outsourcing Malaysia, CIO chapter, Cybersecurity chapter, E-commerce chapter, PIKOM Venture Investment chapter, Women in Tech chapter. These chapters help improve and drive business climates for all member companies, together with promoting industry growth in line with the different national aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, today's session is brought to you by the PIKOM Cybersecurity chapter and is themed Cybercrime Malware Attacks and Digital Forensic. This topic has attracted many audiences to hear various explanations from experts conducting in the areas of cybersecurity. Cybercrime is borderless. Like the COVID-19 pandemic, cybercrime does not respect borders or ideologies, and no one organization can fight it alone. It has to be done collectively. Cybercriminals show no guilt or remorse for their targets, with every business being a source of sensitive information and that has the potential to be exploited. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 has definitely accelerated the move to digital for all businesses, cutting across all industries, and exposed new threats and vulnerabilities for cyber and financial crimes. In today's talk, we will be sharing with the audience the real-life malware attack on some of the Malaysian companies and common tools and techniques used in malware analysis and digital forensics and malware attack incidences. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 experts who will be able to share some light with you. And please join me in welcoming CF Fong, who is the CEO and seasoned cybersecurity practitioner from LGMS for a specialized cybersecurity testing firm. He consults and advises global organizations in the area of cybersecurity defense and best practices. He's also the author of Professional Evaluation and Certification Board Certified Lead Digital Forensic Investigator Program. And joining him today, Ms. Kayne Hoo, a cybersecurity and digital forensic enthusiast with years of experience in the cybersecurity industry. Over the years, she has been involved in various engagements for digital forensic and incident responses. I believe this is definitely going to be an exciting session with a lot of case studies. Fong and Kayne, I wish you all the best in sharing the information with the great number of audiences that we have today. And for those of you who are here, please feel free to post any questions in the Q&A box or in the comments box so that we'll be able to address those questions with you later on. So over to you, Fong.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, PIKOM, for inviting us, giving us the opportunity to share something about digital forensic from LGMS. Can everyone hear me well? Is it too loud? Is the volume okay?
Perfect.
Justin?
Perfect.
Okay. Cool. So today we have installed with 2 case studies. 2 case studies that we want to share with you. Some of the case studies here actually happened in Malaysia. So this is going to be quite interesting. So what I would like to suggest to everyone is that let's keep this session interactive. If you have any questions, anything you would like to share, please feel free to type in the chat room. So me and Kayne will be closely looking at the chat room, and then we'll be happy to answer any of your questions if you have any questions. So without further ado, let's go straight into the presentation. So my name is Fong. I'm currently the CEO and security consultant, serious security consultant for LGMS. In short, basically, I like technologies, and I hack technologies, and I love digital forensic and computer crime investigations. That's that's all I can summarize about myself. And I do enjoy a lot when working with young talents like Kayne and her team when it comes to technical, because this is also the reason why I'm so excited when it comes to learning computer crime investigation, doing things like digital forensic, because there's always something new to learn. In fact, for anyone who is considering digital forensic as a career, the piece of advice is that this is a very exhausting career, because every day you get to learn, you need to learn something new, you need to pick up new skills, and every day we are chasing the hackers and looking at what are the things that the hackers are using, what are the tools, methodologies. We have to play the catch up almost at a daily basis. But that also can be part of the excitement, because we get to see new things, we get to learn from the bad guys, and then use the bad guys techniques to help the good guys, and to fight against the criminals. So it is a very tiring but very exciting journey in the digital forensic career. So Kayne, I'll pass that to you for your quick introduction.
All right. So I've been with LGMS for I think more than 6 years, doing digital forensic incident response. Actually, interestingly, I started in cybersecurity. I applied for a cybersecurity role, and eventually I found my interest and my passion in digital forensics, and I seem to also have a knack for it. So I've been working in the forensic related cases for incident response, computer crime investigations, working closely with Mr. Fong for these kind of cases. Right. I think that should be all for my introduction.
Okay, we save the time for the storytelling, because nobody will be too interested into our profile. Anyway, so today's what we're going to share with you is a basic concept about digital forensic, because I believe there's some kind of a misconceptions out there about digital forensic. What is it about? And we basically like to generalize what is digital forensic about. And what we know about digital forensic, like even for me, right, it started 10 years ago. What we know back then and today, a lot of things have changed. A lot of theories that we have been practicing can no longer be valid in today's world. And we're also going to talk about two cases here. These two cases actually happened in Malaysia, and we just picked two of the cases that we have been actively working on, and it's probably will serve as case studies for everyone to go back today. So at least you know that these kind of things happen, this kind of incident happen. If we encounter similar case, what should we do, right? So we're going to pick two cases that we have encountered here in Malaysia, and we're going to talk about what does it take to conduct a successful digital forensic investigation, meaning that if we encounter similar incidents next time, what would be the right thing to do first in order to maintain and preserve the evidence, and so that we can lead to be able to the situation where we can solve the case. A quick introduction about LGMS, probably if you haven't heard about us, we are a cybersecurity firm. We specialize in a few areas. Many people know us as our pen testing provider, but more importantly, we are also very active in digital forensic computer crime investigation. In fact, to tell you one of the secret is that we actually learn a lot in the digital forensic when we're working on computer crime investigation, because whatever we learn from the bad guys and the criminals, we actually can translate back into a case study where we apply back into our penetration testing for our customers. So hackers today, like what Justine mentioned, is very true, because hackers today, they show no remorse and no preference in any targets, because to the hackers today, we are just an IP address. We are just an entity with an IP address or with an email address. So for hacker to attack, they don't need to choose. Basically, a lot of this probing, a lot of this reconnaissance work today are actually done by software, automated software. So meaning that it also means that any organizations today, as long as you have a website, you have an email address, your employees are using computers with an email address, we can potentially be a victim, right? Hackers do not pick and choose to send out their malware or to send out their phishing email. So this is where we are living in now, and that's why any organizations of any sizes, we need to take precaution. And the other sad thing about computer crime cases is that many of these computer crime cases that we have witnessed, that we have even personally get involved with, never get surfaced to the media, right? So I would say even like 98 or 99% of the time, many of these cases that we are working on never get surfaced to the media. The thing is, when this incident never gets surfaced to the media, there will be no lesson learned, and some of the some of the findings that we have uncovered, some of the modus operandi that we have learned from bad guys, there's no way the public will get to know because it was never surfaced to the media. Of course, there are so many considerations why some of this information are not shared, but in Malaysia, we don't have any laws or any regulations on disclosure. That's one of the things that this is actually something that I'm hoping to see, that one day we have a regulation in place to help to encourage organizations to go for disclosure, meaning that if you got hacked, if you got any security incidents, report to your authority, and authority can actually share this intelligence, and we can work closer to prevent the similar case from happening again to other people. So over the years, we have been very focusing in doing cybersecurity testing and assessment. So and same with digital forensic as well. So today, our clients is not just focusing in Malaysia. We have clients worldwide. We also partner with some of the largest cloud providers in the world today. They're also reselling our cybersecurity services. So that's all I need to talk about the company. So let's move straight into digital forensic. Oh, by the way, this is one of our actual lab and the equipment that we use to conduct digital forensic. You can probably see here, this is one of the tools that we use to do mobile device acquisition, doing analysis on mobile devices and tablets. This is also some of the tools that we use to go to the crime scene. We'll carry out, when we carry out digital forensic on computer crime investigation on crime scene, we'll have portable crime kit to go with it together.
Mr. Fong, sorry, just to interrupt. I think your screen is not sharing.
Oh, not sharing. Hang on.
Yeah.
Until now, it's not sharing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I guess I have to redo the whole thing again. Are you guys seeing the screen?
Yeah, it's showing now.
Okay. That's why I'm kind of scared with team. I don't know why. Either it's crashed on my Mac or either I miss out the screen sharing. This is okay. Anyway, I apologize again. I apologize to everyone that's just looking at me talking. But I was actually showing. I was actually showing some of the case studies and screens here. I was actually drawing and speaking. So again, sincere apologies. Okay, so. Case studies. All right. So today we're going to share with you two real case studies that happened in Malaysia not too long ago. For the first case study is a case where a bank came to us. A bank was actually they have a dispute between their corporate client, and later Kayne, probably you can explain a little bit more about this story in technical terms. So as an overall, the bank came to us. The bank was in a dispute with customers because the customer made some transactions with the bank, but later the customer claim that the transaction was not made by them. It was made by, the transaction never happened. So the bank was doing the investigation on the bank side, and then the customers was required to do investigation on their side. So we were called in to assist the bank to do a more in-depth analysis, and later Kayne will be able to show you what has happened and how the entire incident unfolded by using forensic techniques to uncover the truth. The second story we're going to share with you also happened recently. This is a case where insiders who happen to be a disgruntled partner and employees, and before they leave the companies, actually they have done quite a lot of sabotage before they leave. So by using forensic techniques, we were able to uncover the intention. We were able to uncover some of the valuable evidence to point out that it was done by the insiders with some kind of intentions. So these are the two stories we're going to share with you shortly. So before we go in deeper, right, let me just do a myth on digital forensic, because a lot of the time when we talk about digital forensic, right, the first impression, some of our friends who come to me and say, oh, digital forensic is keyword searching. It's never about keyword searching. Digital forensic is much more than just a keyword search. Digital forensic actually covering, because today we're no longer searching for evidence from computers. We're searching for evidence on various type of devices, on our mobile devices, on our mobile phones, tablets, laptops, or even IoT devices like our CCTV. We need to find a structured and systematic way to extract valuable evidence from all these different devices. This is where digital forensic comes in. And today, why do we need to do digital forensic? Why do we do digital forensic? First of all, to reconstruct the incident timeline, to find out the root cause, to understand what has happened and what, who, where, when, right? And so at once we have the results, then we can understand what is the nature of the case. Is it because of a fraud? Is it because it was a crime, or is it just a misconduct or any disgruntled act? So the root cause is actually the key reason why we want to do digital forensic. After the root cause analysis, we also need to learn something from the incident, and that's why in the digital forensic report, typically you will see, first of all, the root cause analysis, and then you will also see the part that talk about preventive methods if the client desire. Right, so these are many types of cases that you will come across digital forensic, like fraud cases, computer mobile unauthorized access investigations, service interruption, service interruptions, malicious code, basically ransomware. So if you ever heard of ransomware attacks, right, this is also the part that we will play a part where we understand we try to understand how did the ransomware get into the organizations and by using what methods, and how did the ransomware propagate from one place to another place. So digital forensic will be able to show the answers, the root cause to the victim. So common digital forensic software, these are some very commonly known software out there. We're heavily using many of these tools, but some of these tools are open source and mostly are commercial tools. And I think sadly to say that most powerful tools usually are commercial tools. A lot of open source tools today are no longer that useful, because a lot of time we will need to adapt to time changes. That's why commercial tool providers usually spend a lot into the R&D, into the development of their toolkit. That's why the best tools today are still coming from a commercial segment. Right, these are some of the common hardware-based forensic kit that we use. Especially this one is very interesting. This is a UFAT touch 2 device that allow us to extract information from mobile devices, from mobile phones, from mobile tablets. This is our crime kit. We bring this along when we go to a crime scene, when we need to extract information from hard drives. There are RIP blockers. There are many other interesting things. Okay, so today we have actually come across many types of different new challenges. Digital forensic 10, 20 years ago are quite straightforward back then, because what we are looking at is just a hard drive. We need to extract information from hard drive. So what we are typically focusing on is just on the hard drive. But today we have various other things that is no longer as simple as we have seen before. That's why I said in the field of digital forensic, right, it's a constant learning career, because whatever we have learned today, it may not be valid anymore the next day. So for example, today we are seeing a lot of storage are not stored on hard drive anymore. They are stored on the cloud storage. So if you need to extract certain valuable information, right, we can no longer depend on the hard drive. We need to search the cloud. We need to find a way in order to search the cloud while not in fact affecting the integrity of the files on the cloud. And another type of challenges that we face today is also data erasing and wiping tools. There are many tools out there in the market that helps the perpetrator, right, or the attackers to wipe off the evidence. And some of the tools are well built and some of the tools are not. But these kind of tools are remaining a threat to forensic investigators like us, who are constantly finding ways to uncover evidence from storage devices. Another challenges that typically we will face today are encryption. We have come to many situations where when we want to help the client to do forensic analysis on the hard drive, then we realize that the entire hard drive was encrypted, and the clients also do not have the key, or maybe the client have to ask many parties in order to obtain the key. So encryption is also one form of challenges digital forensic analysts we are facing today, because many hard drives today are encrypted, especially when it comes to, for example, Mac today. By default, you can turn on the file encryption very easily. So encryption is one of the challenges faced by forensic analysts, and we need to find ways to overcome the encryption. That's why anyone who are considering a career in digital forensic, if you have some background in ethical hackings, in breaking passwords, in encryptions, it will help as well. And another one is data hiding. Nowadays, there are many ways for perpetrators to hide data within the hard drive. They can hide in certain sectors of hard drive, which is quite fundamental, or they can hide data within a picture, within a sound file. So it is our job to uncover some of these hidden data or hidden clues to flush out the perpetrator. And also, Also one of the biggest challenges digital forensic investigators facing today are skills, because we are constantly in the chase to learn new technologies in order to answer the call for digital forensic. For example, today, if someone passes a device that we've never seen before, and probably we need to spend a lot of time understanding how the device works before we even can apply a structured way to extract valuable information from that device. Let's say if someone sends us a medical device and we need to do a forensic analysis on this medical device, and if we have never touched and never seen the medical device before, that is a kind of challenge, because we would not have the skills to be able to extract evidence from the device in a forensically sound manner. So constantly there will be new technologies being rolled out, and then we also have to have a constant approach in learning new skills. So in digital forensic, in a way, is separated into 4 generic phases. The first phase is to identifications. So during identifications, we will look at what are the potential sources that in the case, when the case happened, right, what are the potential sources? If let's say we talk about ransomware attack, we talk about a disgruntled employee. So when we look at the case, what are the potential evidence that we need to identify first? Are there any hard drives involved? Are there any laptops or PC involved? Was the servers being abused to do something else? And then we need to do identification first. Then typically these are some of the potential evidence sources. Traditional sources, like I mentioned earlier, desktop, storage devices, and new sources, our mobile phones. Many of us are actually checking and downloading our emails on our mobile phones nowadays. Cloud storage, our IoT devices, even drones. Sometimes we need to look at how drones, what are the flight logs and web accounts. And once we have identified the source of evidence, the next thing we look at is to do collection. Now, collection also poses another form of challenges. How do we collect? Also determine the quality of the evidence in the later stage of the forensic analysis. Because before we can do analysis, we need to ensure that the collection process is intact, is bulletproof and watertight. So whatever we collected are having the highest integrity, so that we can move on to do the analysis. Because if during the collection process, if we miss out any piece of critical information, right, and then even after the analysis and reporting, whatever evidence that we're going to tender to court also will be questionable. So that's why during this part of the process we are also putting a lot of attention into doing the collection. We need to collect the information in a correct manner and ensure that the whole process is airtight. So collection is quite interesting today, because previously when we talk about collection, we talk about cloning hard drives. Today, a lot of clues and useful information are no longer residing on hard drives. Where are they residing? They're residing on memories. They're residing on the current running process of the computers. So that's why, sidetrack a little bit. So in case of, let's say, ransomware attack or malware attack, right? The first thing we should do, in fact, for organizations, for anyone who get affected by malware and ransomware attack, is not to turn off the computers. Don't switch off your computers, because when we are switching off the computers, a lot of these valuable clues from the memory, from the running processes will be gone, and we won't be able to do a complete root cause analysis later on. So what happened is, when we have an attack like this, a ransomware attack, a malware attack that is happening on our computers, what we should do is to disconnect it from the network first. Isolate it from any point of contact in the network first, and then look based on the situations. Then we decide whether we should turn off or we don't want to turn off. So the first step we should do is isolation first, disconnect from network first, because the memory. In fact, Kayne, later we're going to share with you how does a malware look like in the modern day malwares. Today the malware are fileless. Malware are no longer appear in an executable file, because that's why when we do a scan on the infected machine, we will be able to find the malware, because malware today are fileless. So when a malware is fileless, how did the malware even get into the machine? So this is something that the forensic will be able to answer. So today we are no longer looking at a hard drive. We need to look at volatile data like our memory. We need to do memory. We need to collect information from our memory, and from there we need to analyze what is inside our memory. right? And in order to acquire memory, in order to do collection also, there are two types of collection. One is what we call live system collection. Another one is you call date system collection. This is a conventional way to do digital forensic, meaning that we extract information from a hard drive where the computer is no longer running. So we can do whatever we need to do on the hard drive, extract information, put it onto our machine and read it. Another type of collection technique is called live system collection techniques, meaning that while the computer is running, we need to collect as much as information from the computers. Now, today, many computers cannot be shut down, right? For example, if a data center, they are running a storage area network, they have a servers running a multi-million-dollar web application running transactions. These are the computers that we cannot afford to shut down. But at the same time, we need to collect evidence for us to do analysis. So what we need to do is we will need to use this approach to acquire critical information from the systems, right? So because we cannot take away the hard drive, it's a RAID 7 drive and it's a multiple disk plater. We won't be able to take out the drive from the network into our lab. So we need to do live system forensic investigation. So Kayne, feel free to slot in when you have anything to add.
Yeah, this one, there's something very interesting is that most of the time people would think that memory forensics have to be always, memory has to always be captured on a live system, but there are instances where sometimes the computer has already been shut down by the time you got there. So in this case, we'll have to fall back to looking for memory dumps from a date system. So there are three places which you can look for: the hibernation file, the page file, and sometimes there will be already a memory crash dump there already. Do take note, the page file is not entirely a full memory dump because it's just a page area that is paged out from the memory. So these are alternative options to look at if, let's say, the system is already shut down. Yeah, that's all.
So the next part is analysis. Analysis also play a very important part because all of these are cascading in a very close chain of action. Because if we miss out one of the part, right, the whole process will break. That's why as a forensic analyst, we always really standing on our toes to ensure that all the processes are really carried out in a structured manner. So the next process, after we've done our collection, we collected the memory, we collected the hard drive data, we need to do analysis. Analysis also, there are various type of things that we need to apply on, various perspective of knowledge. Like for instance, there are different type of file systems. Even Windows alone, there are more than 2 type file systems. And what about Linux is even more. So different operating system, different type of file system, and different file system also require different ways to handle the file system. And
yeah, just to add on, right, to what Mr. Fong has mentioned about the file system, actually we had a very interesting experience where we were appointed as the examiner for a court case. So we were supposed to observe an examiner appointed by the opposing side. So what we saw is that the lack of understanding of the file system actually jeopardizes on the evidence search, because they were working with a backup disk that is running on a Linux file system, but they were actually viewing it using a Windows operating system. So when they plug that disk into Windows, it pops up an error, says the file system cannot be read, and they just mark it off as disk not accessible. So there's a lot of information that's being missed out here because of the lack of knowledge of file system. That's why this is a very, very important thing to know.
I think you're referring to one of the case that we have come across. Yeah, okay. For Windows systems, I think many organizations today are running on Windows systems. So there are a lot of interesting things actually left over on the computers. For example, when we delete a file, we are not really deleting a files. We are actually moving the pointers to the files. The files are still there. However, having said that, I still have some kind of reservation because this theory is true. Because when you delete a file, the file is no longer the file is not really deleted, the file is still on the hard drive. But today, because of SSD, solid state drive, this theory has been shaken. Now, if we are talking about mechanical hard drive, right, this theory is true because when we remove a file, the file is still on the mechanical hard drive. However, today, many computers are using SSD, solid state drive. So meaning that when we remove a file, the file could really be removed later on by the SSD, not by the operating system, by the SSD. So a lot of these things, this theory always get challenged and get refreshed and get renewed. So we also have to keep catching up with these kind of findings.
Yeah, just to add on, because of these kind of challenges, so what we will do in response often is we'll try to adapt the approaches, methodologies to overcome these challenges. Because data recovery, because of SSD, data recovery is getting more and more difficult. There are a lot of times where a case is given to us and we are not able to recover anything. It was wiped pretty clean, and even we are able to know that there has been something that's been deleted, but we are not able to know the contents of the items that were deleted because it cannot be recovered. So we have to fall back to alternative ways to find out and establish the intention and the evidence from there. So in this case, we will be looking at other operating system artifacts that can prove an intention of the suspect, or what we call the user activity analysis. So which brings us to this slide right now, which Mr. Fong showing. This registry analysis. Registry is actually a very interesting operating system artifact that contains various very rich information related to activities within a computer, configuration of a computer. So the next slide, I think, will be on the how registry can actually track user file activities. So there's there's a lot of operating system artifacts that can track user file activities, but because this webinar is really short, so we just condense a lot of information. So we want to talk about shellbacks, right? So shellbacks, if you first look at it at a raw format, right, it will look very intimidating, but of course, when we do investigations, there are tools and parsers that could actually parse it out into more readable. So another thing is the memory analysis. So memory analysis is a very important thing which we will usually cover, especially for intrusion cases and sometimes even court cases. Reason being that malware now adopts very defensive tactics. They will be fileless. So memory analysis is one way to actually identify whether there has been any malicious activities within the victim. Right. So we have actually a very simple demo here.
Kayne, you can take over the slides. If you can take over the slide.
Okay. I think I requested
allow. Hang on.
Okay, so we have a simple demo here, which I think. So this is a very popular case study that people often use for understanding fileless malware and also understanding how threat works, right? So usually for memory analysis, we can even identify decryption keys. Let's say if the endpoint is having a endpoint decryption like BitLocker, sometimes you may find decryption keys floating around the memory. Right. So, okay, next. I press next. So as you can see here, these are running processes that are passed from a memory image. If we work long enough, we already sort of know what is normal. We can tell what is normal and normal when we look at information like this. So we can see that there are suspicious information, suspicious running processes that we're seeing. LSAS is supposed to be only one instance on a normal Windows machine. Right. So based on this, we can actually, let's move to the next slide. We can actually parse out the link libraries. That means the imported objects of the processes, and we can try to see which one is actually legitimate. So in malware analysis, usually we will commonly malwares have very little imported objects, as you can see here, and also they will be calling DLLs that don't make sense, right? Because LSAS is actually for Windows authentication, and there's not a lot of reason. There's no reason why it should be using DLLs that are related to network connectivity. As you can see here, the WinInit, WSOC 32. So we can actually flush out what are the malicious software processes that are running in the memory. So when we look at further, right, we can even identify there's code injected in a running process. These are injected code, and I'm not going to go into technical.
You're already going too technical already, Kayne. Okay, let me just stop you here.
Yeah.
We need to move on. We haven't even gone into the case study. I know that because previously this was actually prepared as a 2-hour kind of a for semi-technical training. So we're already going too deep into that. So I got to stop you here. So what is happening is that today malware and attacks, right? We no longer expect to see a file-based malware. The malwares today are fileless. So how did the malware get into an organization? That is the interesting part. So once they have gone into the organizations, malware will actually have different parts. We no longer see a complete piece of malware like sending out through an email. You double click on the email, then attachment, then you get infected. It's no longer that case. Malware is actually split into several components. So you have several stages when malware can infect someone within the organizations. So this is the part that when we during forensic analysis, we get to learn how the malware get into an organization and what have they done. What are the malwares were doing in order to get themselves replicated over. And today we have even seen malware not only they can delete themselves, the first infection, first stage when they once they got infected, they delete themselves from the file system. We also have seen malware that can even uninstall the defenses that appear on the endpoints. For example, if your endpoint is installed with antivirus, the malware will be able to detect what brand of antivirus and start uninstalling antivirus. So we are talking about assailants who are really advanced today. We are no longer expecting to see typical file attacks and attachment that comes in. We are looking at very advanced persistent threat. So I'm going to quickly go through this. So why don't we just go to the point, go to the part that...
yeah, we can just go to the case study. Case
studies, yes. So meantime, if anyone would like to ask any questions, right, please feel free to type in the box. So we'll be happy to answer some of these questions. I know that this is kind of a challenge. Kayne, I let you take over. You go straight to the case study. Wait, this one?
No. Yeah, this one's the case study. Yeah. So case study. The controls a bit chunky.
Oh, sorry. Allow. Right.
Okay. Right. So this is one of the case study that we have encountered, I think, recently. So for this one, I think Mr. Fong has already mentioned a bit earlier. This one is regarding a bank, and then with their customer, is a dispute on a transaction. So the customer actually had a transaction that just went through to an unknown bank account. So they only realized that when one of their customers, their suppliers, were asking them to make the payment, and they said, "Hey, I already made payment," but actually they didn't make it. They made it to someone else, right? So they don't know who actually made the transaction. So there was a dispute, and the bank actually hired us to do an investigation to find out why. So what happened was that we carried out investigation on the client side. So we had keyword searches done using the transaction record numbers, the receipt numbers, the recipient account numbers, the fraudster's account number. So when we do the keyword searches, there were no leads. And also it is understandable because the access to make the transaction is on a web browser. And usually when web artifacts are stored, they only store information about the website. They don't actually store the website content, right? So the next thing that we will do is just user activity analysis. And in fact, based on this, we found a very useful lead. We found out that the user has actually clicked on a phishing email and executed a malicious attachment from there. So using this lead, we were able to identify a root cause by doing the malware analysis. So from the malware analysis, we know that there was actually a remote access Trojan that was installed when they execute a malicious attachment, right? So that Trojan has been watching their every move and key logged every activity that they have been doing. So the usernames and passwords were actually key logged. Let me just show. Right. So when we prepared our report, so this is some examples of our report where we redacted and changed the very sensitive information for private confidentiality purposes. So this is just to show you how we write our reports. A lot of work is very manual when we write our report, because the thing about forensics is each case is very unique, and even the malware is unique. Threat attribution is also very specific to a particular malware that we are dealing. So even the timeline is different. So we will usually share to our clients, what kind of what has happened from the start. They click the malware and up to the end, what happened. Let me just show.
Kayne, sorry to interrupt. The question is, go back to the previous slide. There were some events. The malware was identified on 2018, right? April 15, 2018. And the incident took place on 2020, somewhere in 2020. So what's the relationship in between?
Okay, so the Trojan actually has already came in way longer and has been doing the observation, key logging, the activities. So it happened 2 years prior to the incident where before the unauthorized transaction take place. So yeah, that's very often because this is actually quite a small case. We are not talking about a very big enterprise level kind of cyber threat incident. So it is very normal for attackers to actually lay dormant in the network, keep watching, and then discovering, learning about your network before they take action and start their attack. So by the time you actually find out, it's usually quite late, and they have been around for quite some time. And in fact, this is not just the only case that we have encountered this. In previous other cases, I think Mr. Fong, you still remember.
Yeah. I'm going to put on a message here. I'm going to look at straight at the camera here. I'm going to tell everyone this is very important. This is very, very important. Out of all these cases that we have come across, whether they're large financial institutions, small institute, whatever business nature they're in, 99.999% of the time, right, the hacker who hacked in, they stay dormant and stay quietly in the environment for a period of time. The longest one we have seen, this is still not the longest one. We have seen even longer one, but stay there for 4 or 5 years within an organization. Hacker who hack in, just imagine this, hacker who hack into your environment, they stay there for 4 and 5 years. Imagine what potentially the hackers could be doing, right? And recently, a few months ago, we were also working with one of the financial institutions here in Malaysia. There was a ransomware attack. Okay, now when we have ransomware attack, this is sometimes is a relief because we know that the hackers were there. The hackers launched the attack. Because the ransomware get to known. But the scarier part is when we went in to do a forensic investigation for these financial institutions, we went in. We did a deeper investigation. Then we found out that actually the hacker who first hacked into the financial institutions was stated back in 2018. So one group of hackers hacked into the financial institutions for 3 years, right, doing whatever they were doing. And then another group of hackers came along, hacked in only like 3 months ago. They hacked in, and then this group of new hackers, they simply just deploy a ransomware and then get the entire financial institution files encrypted, all of their network devices and the servers files encrypted. So it seems like there were two groups of at least there were two groups of hackers. Only the last group of hackers who came in, they're not really interested to stay dormant, but they just simply launch an attack. That's how the financial institutions got to know that they were attacked. Now, you just imagine this: if the last batch of hackers, the latest hackers, didn't come in to launch that ransomware attack, the first hacker who got in back in 2018, they are still there inside the network, and it is that scary because hackers today, if we have a website, if we have a corporate website and our website got hacked, get defaced, we should say 2 words: thank you, 𝗙ihe 𝗙𝗹𝗪𝗪, because we get to know, right? Same goes with ransomware attack. If we got ransomware attack, right, we should say thank you because we get to know about the ransomware. Either we pay or we don't pay, right? The only scary part is when a hacker hack in, they stay dormant and stay persistent and then remain in our network and we have no idea about them. And that is a scary part. And in most cases, when we went to the crime scene already and it's about too late already, something already happened. And the scarier part is we found out there are other people already inside the network and hiding inside the network. And this is the scary part. So that's why today, if I can, I would advocate to anybody, everyone here, do a compromise assessment, do a detailed compromise assessment about your infrastructure, about your network, about your systems. Because hackers, when they hack today, they're not interested to take down our servers or straight away do a ransomware encryption. They could have been hiding there, gathering information, gathering intelligence, and do something else. And that's why we are living in a very, very different world today, right? We have seen many cases that a lot of these things could have been prevented, but it is not, because the awareness was not there. And that's the reason why we are organizing awareness like this. We need to let everyone know what is actually happening in the world today, and even in the industry in Malaysia. We thought, oh, Malaysia, we're quite peaceful. We are not. You know, we have a lot of smart and cunning and hackers among us, right? So it is not as simple as we see today. The world is not as simple as we see. Kayne, over to you.
Yeah, Mr. Fong, I think there are some questions, but I'll just bring us through these very quickly. So what we usually do when we have a case like this, we'll try to attribute the malware behavior and the characteristics to the MITRE TTPs. So we're going to have like details to tell them, like, you know, how they came in, what was used to execute, how did they maintain persistence, and each of these will be supported by evidences that we found based on our investigation. So right, so we'll also have some execution flow for their understanding, like what happens when the malware, the malicious attachment was executed. So it will just install persistence, they will start collecting data, and they will drop files. These are the keylog data, whether is it obfuscated or not, and from that is how we found out that their username and password to that particular banking website was actually locked.
So I have a question. Basically, back to your case, right? What happened was the client of the bank was actually being compromised for 3 years. The hackers was actually living inside the client of the bank for 3 years and gathering intelligence and gathering the username, password, logging the username and passwords, and eventually they pretend to be the client of the bank and make the transaction and then deposit the money to someone else, right? So we have a question here coming from Wan Nu Hidayah. This is a very good question because she said that if the malware is in our network and hiding before the attack for years, right? Can we identify it by monitoring the flow transactions that anomalies from normal transactions? The answer is yes and no, all right? Depending on what kind of hackers that we are dealing with. If we have seen hackers who hacked in, and hackers don't connect back to their CNC server. They do not connect back to the command and control server outside of the network. What they even do, we have seen hackers set up internal command and control servers, meaning that once they have hacked in, right, they'll set up another server within the victim's network, and this server will be served as command and control server. And this command and control server, if needed to communicate to external world, they probably use some kind of encryption, either it's a SSL encryption or something that doesn't look suspicious and doesn't connect back to any known command and control server out there. Probably connect to some AWS cloud or whatever server out there. It doesn't look harmful. So, and the question is that, can we block this type of unknown connection? The answer is yes, obviously we can, but problem is, can we afford to block it or not? If some of these connections, because coming from one single network, there's so many connections going in and out every day. Are we able to filter out which connections is valid and which connections are not valid? This itself take a tremendous amount of work, especially when the hackers are smart enough, they will connect to some web services, some website that doesn't seem harmful in any way, right? So it is not easy to identify hackers' activities by just monitoring our network traffic. We need to do something more aggressive. We need to go in to really dig deep into the processes, the running processes, in the checking on the memories of our system within the network. So that's why I was just saying that the compromise assessment is part of the thing that we're now advocating today.
Yeah, and just to add on, is that a lot of attackers, they're very smart, so they're not gonna have like very obvious obvious transactions where they'll try to make a transaction look legit. So they're gonna do it like by batch, and it's very irregular number, so it doesn't look to you that, oh, suddenly one shot, one whole big amount that is being transferred. It will look like different chunks over several different occasions. So that's what happened for this particular first case that we are talking about. It wasn't like one whole transaction. There was actually 2 transactions, and they only found out in the second transaction that something was wrong.
Yeah, another question is coming from Mr. Woon. Mr. Woon says, compromise assessment and RMIT requirement for best practices, and how often shall we do it? I think as frequent as you do it, at least once a year. Now, one of the things I would like to clarify on the compromise assessment is this, because we now suddenly everyone talk about compromise assessment because of Bank Negara's requirement back in May. But in reality, right, we have been doing compromise assessment for the last more than 10 years, because compromise assessment is always part of the digital forensic exercise. Because once we have identified a root cause, we need to ensure that we are able to flush out whoever is still hiding in the victim's network. So we do compromise assessment. Now, the thing is, there's a lot of confusions now in the industry, because people, when mention about compromise assessment, there are vendors who just say, oh, I bring in certain brands of EDR going to your network, then we can do compromise assessment. It is not as simple as that, because compromise assessment involves multiple layers of checking and verification. Doing endpoint assessment is just like 30% of the entire exercise. We need to look at many aspects of the infrastructure. We need to look at, from a network, Active Directories, the way how we back up our SIEM, how we operate our logs, how we monitor our past events. There are many things that we need to look at instead of just looking at the EDR itself. So recommendations for everyone is that if you're looking for compromise assessment, don't look at EDR alone, because EDR perhaps is just like 30% of the entire effort. Yeah, I hope I can answer this question. We have another question, Kayne.
Is malicious PDF still popular nowadays? Actually, not really, because most of the time the antivirus is able to pick up a malicious PDF. What is actually popular right now is Fowler's malware. So they are not running on actual objects. They don't have like a physical file. What they do is actually obfuscated code running on WMI, PowerShell. Sometimes it's collected over SMB. PowerShell is actually very, very common. And they also like to use PSExec. So these kind of problems usually happens when organizations don't have proper application control in their environment. Sometimes, for the sake of convenience, network or server administrators, they will just install tools and softwares on their own, to make it easier for their life to actually manage the servers. But because of this kind of convenience, it's actually opening up security risk. So application controls get out of hand, and when we do investigations, when we come in, we actually see there's a lot of unauthorized applications being used. Remote access tools, there's a lot, right?
Yeah, I have a question from Mr. 𝗙cie𝗟𝗏. He said that what happened to the SME industry in Malaysia? I think this is a very important question, because SME industries and larger organizations, right, today we are facing the same amount of challenges coming from the assailants, because the bad guys, they don't really care whether we are big organizations or small organizations. Being a smaller organization, obviously we are more at a disadvantaged side, because we may not be able to invest enough resources and time to really take care of our parameters from different layers. So I believe that right now, the biggest problem with SME is that we need to really prioritize where to invest first. Compared with larger organizations, perhaps larger organizations already deploy multiple layers of defenses, but for SME, the biggest problem now is that we have to find out what are the priorities that we need to work on. So from our perspective, right, at least the most important thing for SME that need to be done is education, is awareness education for all of our employees and staff. Just teaching everyone about the best practices of what to do and what not to do. Like, for example, don't go and download pirated software from any websites. Don't use pirated software in the office. Although the company will not willing to spend on software, but never do pirated software. Don't watch like any videos they're not supposed to watch. Some of these best practices at least need to be starting to get educated over, starting from SME industry. We also have another question coming from Mr. Woon. This is also very important. What is the difference between compromise assessment and threat hunting? Good question. Threat hunting, as the name implies, that we go out and hunt for signs of compromise, signs of threats. For example, if we see that there are some file servers that suddenly they exhibit some kind of strange behavior, they always some strange connection coming out from this file server going to somewhere else. So this is a strange behavior consider. So a threat hunting exercise is to go out and hunt for any signs of threats, whether the file server has been infected with any backdoors or infected with anything that's not supposed to be there. Whereas compromise assessment is something like a big picture, right? You can say threat hunting, it could be part of a subset of compromise assessment. The whole objective of compromise assessment is to assess whether our infrastructure has been compromised or not. It's either 1 or 0. There's no in between, maybe compromised or maybe not. No, the answer for compromise assessment should be either on and off, whether we have been compromised and where are the compromise, or we have not been compromised at all. So threat hunting, you can say, is one of the subset activity that we use during compromise assessment. Now, what other subset of activities we do during compromise assessment? We do log analysis. We look at previously what has happened within the network and has the organizations been deploying their controls effectively or not. This is also a real story. We work with an organization. The organization actually deploy IPS, deploy multiple layers of network control. But when we go deeper and analyze the log, then we realize that the IPS is actually not able to log the source attack IP address because the way how they configure the IPS. So this is one of the findings in compromise assessment. We want to see all angles, right? So hopefully I'm able to answer your questions. Kayne, shall we proceed, or do we have any other questions?
I think there are some questions on the IoT devices connecting and disconnecting to networks. How does this affect digital forensics for these devices?
Okay, you can proceed on this first. Let me just gather the questions. Yeah.
Okay, I'll proceed with the slide first in the meantime. All right, so the second case is regarding a corporate fraud case. So what happened is that the ex-staff of a company has stolen the intellectual property, and they have left the company and brought the company data with them. So initially, when they came to us with the notebook of the ex-staff, they don't have much information. So they were actually asking us to do a check to see what is suspicious. So what happened was that, let me just, we did a data recovery. So we found that there were actually a lot of information being deleted and it cannot be recovered because they were using data wiping and erasing tools like eraser.exe and also CCleaner. So because data cannot be recovered, so we couldn't have much of a further context, although we were sort of able to establish an intention that a user has been deleting the data and cleaning up the computer. So we also did a keyword search. We found that there are signs of company data appearing in documents and some artifacts, but there wasn't a lot of context here either. But what we actually found, right, which established a very strong intention, is from the activity analysis. So we found that right before the time the ex-staff has left the company, there were a spike of file activities. And right before the file activities, they were actually erasing and wiping data during the same week as well. And there were also accesses to a personal cloud storage account. We see their company file names that are actually in their personal cloud storage accounts. So these are the information that we're able to prove the intention that they have been stealing company intellectual information. So these are some of the report redacted for piracy. We also changed some of the information here. So this is just to show you how customized our reports are. So it's very, very subject to the case objective, the case nature, and what we're looking at. So in this case, we're actually looking at the user activities in terms of the file accesses to the cloud storage accounts, and also the intention to wipe data from the laptop. So all these tied up all together actually managed to work with the lawyer, and we managed to build a very strong case to apply for an end-pillar order to seize the more data from that ex-staff, right? So it was a pretty successful case. So yeah, so this part is the last section we're gonna go through before we end our seminar. Right, so we want to highlight, right, how important is it to have proper forensic training to do forensic work, right? Because sometimes there are cases when they can come to us, they say, oh, I have my own IT guy to actually do the inspection, or I send it to 𝗙𝗹𝗪𝗓, some IT company, some the guy that fixed the laptop to actually do the data recovery. So we have encountered cases like this. So let's have a very quick case discussion here. So we're talking about the case previously that I was talking about. There was a data being stolen from the company, and the laptop was actually brought to a computer expert, right? They don't have formal training. They don't have bad intentions. They just want to help, but of course they don't have the necessary training to do the right thing. So as a computer expert with no formal training, normally what we see, right, they will directly install the recovery software on the laptop itself, right, to recover data. And based on that, they couldn't recover data because of the wiping software. So what they're going to do is they will probably try to seize more, search for more data on the laptop, but they were not able to find much. The thing is, they left the internet on. Suspect was able to log in and also continue wipe more data. And then the final problem is, right, because the expert was not trained, they don't know exactly what wiping software was used, when was it installed, when was it executed, because this requires knowledge of certain operating system artifacts. So the impact here is that the unallocated data was overwritten by the activities that were done on the laptop itself. So recovery is even more difficult. And then there were more activities causing more changes on the laptop. And also the evidence is not properly preserved and the report is not credible. Right now, all the court is able to take is the expert's word only, because the report cannot be used, the evidence is not reliable. But if let's say you have a proper process and you know what's the correct way to actually do the investigation, I think it's a bit very laggy. Let me try to, right. So as an examiner, the hard disk, in this case, hard disk can be removed from the laptop, and using a write blocking device, they can make a duplicate working copy. So the original copy, we usually don't touch it, and we will just work on the working copy, do the examination there, and based on our knowledge on operating system artifacts, we would know whether that 𝗙cie_𝗟𝗚𝗓 was actually installed, and then after that deleted by the suspect. But of course, when you uninstall erasing tool, sometimes they will leave logs. It was not fully cleaned out, right? So from the logs, you can know that there has been how long it has been used, how often it has been used. And although the files were wiped, we were able to know what the file names from the restore point and form a more customized keyword list from there. And based on that keyword list, all right, you can press next. Can do a keyword search, and you can actually find out more information whether there has been a intellectual property theft here, right? So the key takeaway here, I think it's not. Right, anyone can actually call themselves an expert, right? And recover data and run a keyword search, but it takes very discipline-specific training to be able to produce a chain of custody, handle, analyze evidence in a correct way, and effectively communicate forensic process and results. The reporting part and the communication part is very important, because when you are talking to stakeholders, intrusion cases, you're talking to people like CEOs, C-levels, managers, supervisors. They're not technically inclined. And for court cases, you're talking to people like lawyers, the judges. They are not technical people either. So the communication process is very important. You know the technical terms enough to actually explain them in a very easy to understand way. And finally, make sure you establish an understanding before you select a digital forensic examiner. So when you approach someone to do the investigation, make sure they have the correct training, they have the correct certifications and the necessary experience in this field. And if they have similar experience in this type of case, reason being, sometimes when you are dealing with a case that involves a mobile phone, you want to do forensic on mobile phone, certain examiners, they are more stronger or more familiar with Windows servers or laptops endpoints, not so strong in mobile, then you will have to relook and see whether they are suitable for handling this kind of case, right? And also do look into considerations such as cost, because if someone has experience doing this, they should be able to give you an estimate effort and the cost required to cover whatever you need for your objective. Right, that should be it. Mr. Fong, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think we have exceeded the time a little bit, so apologies to you, Justin.
No worries.
Yeah, I do have one question coming from an audience I need to address. It's a very good question coming from Lionel. He was saying that there are so many AI products claim that they are the best, right? How do we determine whether we apply the right AI to protect our network from cybersecurity? In fact, today many vendors can make whatever claims that they can make in their product, in their machines learning capability, in their artificial intelligence capability. But what we are looking at from the assessor perspective, right? To tell the truth, unfortunately, in most of the time when we go into the crime scene, right, the crime scene, the people who suffer from the crime scene, also the people who are using some of these products. So product itself is just a product. Eventually, we still need to look at other areas of security, like people, whether we have provided enough training to our people so that they are aware not to do something silly when they are working. And then also the processes. How do we manage our access control? How do we manage new devices being added into a network? Do we review our logs? Do we do a regular security assessment? So the process and people are equally important than the product. So product, I would say, is maybe 30% of the importance when it comes to cybersecurity. That's why it's kind of sad. Sometimes when you look at the situations, right, we look at the victim, they have installed proper antivirus, proper endpoint protections, but yet they still get affected by ransomware. Still, like I said earlier, there were even ransomware who are powerful enough to uninstall endpoint protection software. So we don't bet too much on the software itself. We need to look at other angles as well. So over to you, Justin. So sorry about it.
All right, no worries, Fong. I think you and Kayne have covered pretty much a lot of information here, and I think a lot of questions also has come up. We definitely probably need to organize a workshop, like some of them have actually requested. Probably we'll try and organize one in the next round. But thank you so much. I think there was a lot of insightful information and best practices that both of you have shared. And to all the audience, thank you so much for staying with us during this time. And we need to be vigilant on what we actually open our computers to, all right? And let's stay safe, not only from this malicious malwares and viruses, but also from the current pandemic that we are facing. So once again, thank you, everyone. We will definitely get back to you on the next session. Thanks, Fong. Thanks,
Thank
Kayne.
you.
All right.
Thanks, PIKOM.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.